How wealthy are you compared to most? You'll be shocked. Let me ask you something quick. If someone handed you $1,000 in cash right now, unexpected, no strings attached, would it genuinely change your month? For a lot of people, the honest answer is yes. And that answer tells you more about your financial position than your salary, your job title, or the neighborhood you live in. Because here's what most people don't realize: the majority of Americans are far closer to financial vulnerability than they are to financial freedom. And the gap between those two things isn't income. It's wealth. Specifically, net worth, what you actually own minus what you actually owe. Today I want to walk you through exactly where most people stand, where you probably stand, and, more importantly, why the number you're picturing in your head right now is almost certainly wrong. We live in a culture that confuses spending with having. A new car in the driveway looks like wealth. A big apartment in a nice part of town feels like success. A good salary, a decent job, a packed schedule, all of it signals stability. But signals aren't the same as substance. Here's a number that reframes everything. The median net worth of an American household is around $193,000. That's the middle. Half the country is above it, half is below. When people hear that, they usually have one of two reactions. Either they think, that's actually pretty good, which probably means they're not there yet and it sounds aspirational. Or they think, wait, that's it? Which usually means they're above it and didn't realize how much of the country isn't. Both reactions reveal the same gap in understanding. Most people genuinely don't know where the middle is. And if you don't know where the middle is, you have no idea where you are relative to it. Before we go further, let's be very clear about what we're measuring. Net worth is not your income. It's not your credit score. It's not your savings account balance. It's a simple equation: everything you own, minus everything you owe. Your home, your car, your retirement accounts, your investments, any savings, those are assets. Your mortgage, your car loan, your student debt, your credit card balances, those are liabilities. Subtract one from the other. That's your number. That's your wealth. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. A lot of people who feel middle class, who earn decent money and live decent lives, sit down and do this math and discover their number is somewhere between $0 and $30,000. Some discover it's negative. Not because they made terrible decisions. Not because they're irresponsible. But because the structure of modern life, student loans in your 20s, a car payment, rent in an expensive city, quietly eats the gap between earning and building. Let's look at what the data actually shows, broken into rough wealth tiers. Bottom 25%, net worth under about $23,000. This includes people with negative net worth, meaning their debts outweigh everything they own. And it includes a surprising number of people with good incomes who simply haven't built anything yet. Lower middle, roughly $23,000 to $180,000. This is where a lot of homeowners land early on. They have equity in a house, maybe a modest retirement account, a car that's mostly paid off. It looks stable. And it is, more stable than the bottom. But the liquid cushion, the money they could actually access in a crisis, might be $10,000 to $20,000. That's not a lot of runway. The middle, around $193,000. The median. Solid on paper. Fragile in practice. Strip out home equity, the money locked inside a house you can't easily access, and the actual liquid net worth for the median household is closer to $30,000 to $40,000. That's a few months of serious expenses. That's the real middle. Upper middle, $193,000 to about $600,000. Here's where the shift happens. Households in this range aren't just saving, they're investing. Retirement accounts are growing. There might be a brokerage account. The asset base is diversifying. And diversification is what turns wealth from a number into a machine. Top 25%, $600,000 to roughly $1. 7 million. At this level, your investments are doing real work. The gap between earning and building has closed, and in many cases the investments are building faster than the income. Top 10%, above $1. 7 million. This is financial independence territory. A $1. 7 million portfolio, invested conservatively at a 4% withdrawal rate, generates roughly $68,000 a year, without touching the principal. That's more than the median household earns from working. The money has become self-sustaining. Here's where it gets genuinely interesting, and where most financial conversations fail you. All those numbers I just gave you? They're for the entire population. Every age, every stage, lumped together. Which means comparing yourself to them without factoring in your age is like comparing your running time to the Olympic record without mentioning you're 22 and just started training. The number is real. The context changes everything. The Federal Reserve breaks net worth down by age group. And the differences are stark. Under 35? The median net worth is about $39,000. That's the middle for your generation. Not the middle of America, the middle of your peers. Ages 35 to 44? The median climbs to $136,000. 45 to 54? About $247,000. 55 to 64? Around $365,000. 65 and older? Roughly $410,000, that's peak accumulation, right before people start drawing down. Why does this matter so much? Because a 29-year-old with $80,000 in net worth might feel behind, compared to the national median of $193,000 they've seen online. But against their actual age group? They're well above the median. They're probably in the top 30% for their generation. Meanwhile, a 52-year-old with $180,000 might feel comfortable, above the lower middle bracket, close to the median. But for their age group, the median is nearly $250,000. They're actually behind their peers, and they have a narrower window to catch up. Same dollar amount. Completely different situations. Age is not just context. It's the most important variable in the equation. Here's the part that trips most people up, and it's not a math problem. It's a perception problem. We judge our financial health by what we see around us. And what we see around us is almost always misleading. Your coworkers aren't telling you about their debt. Your friends aren't sharing their net worth over dinner. Social media shows the vacation, not the credit card statement that funded it. You see the new kitchen renovation, not the home equity loan behind it. So we calibrate ourselves against a version of the world that's been heavily filtered toward appearances. And we almost always conclude that we're average, maybe slightly below, maybe slightly above. Rarely do we suspect we're significantly off. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people dramatically overestimate where they are, because they're comparing themselves to an image of prosperity rather than actual data. There's also a quiet bias toward optimism when it comes to our own finances. Psychologists call it the better-than-average effect. We tend to believe we're doing better than most in areas we care about. And money is one of those areas where that bias can cost you years of progress. If you believe you're fine, you don't run the numbers. And if you don't run the numbers, you don't know you're off course until the course has gotten very long. Let's be direct about what separates people who build wealth from people who don't, because it's not what most personal finance content tells you. It's not frugality alone. Cutting your coffee budget isn't the variable. Spending less than you earn matters, but the magnitude of the gap between spending and saving matters more. It's not income alone either. Some of the most financially fragile households in America earn well over $100,000 a year. Income without investment is just a faster treadmill. The actual driver is this: how much of your income becomes an asset instead of an expense, and for how long. That's it. That's the whole game. If you earn $70,000 and consistently invest $700 a month into something that grows, a 401k, an index fund, a paid-down mortgage, at a 7% average annual return, you'll have roughly $520,000 in 20 years. That's upper middle-class territory. Not from a high salary. From consistency over time. Start at $1,200 a month invested, same return, same timeline. You're at $900,000 in 20 years. Close to the top 10% threshold. From a reasonable income and a decision that became a habit. The math doesn't require luck. It doesn't require genius. It mostly requires time and not stopping. But here's what gets in the way, and I want to be honest about this, because a lot of financial content makes it sound simpler than it is. The first trap is lifestyle acceleration. Most people, every time their income goes up, find that their expenses go up too. A raise leads to a nicer apartment. A promotion leads to a newer car. The gap between income and spending stays roughly the same, and so the wealth-building engine never actually turns on. The second trap is debt mismanagement. Not all debt is equal. A mortgage at a reasonable interest rate, secured against an appreciating asset, that's arguably productive debt. Credit card debt at 22% interest on electronics and dining out, that's a wealth drain. The difference between these two categories is enormous, and a lot of people carry too much of the second while telling themselves they're doing okay because they have the first. The third trap is analysis paralysis. A lot of people know they should be investing. They've heard about index funds, retirement accounts, compound growth. But the combination of complexity, choice overload, and a vague sense that they'll get to it eventually keeps them on the sideline. And every year on the sideline is a year of compounding lost. You can't recover that time. So, let's bring this back to you. Do you know your net worth number? Not a rough sense of it. The actual number. Add up your assets. Every account, every piece of equity, every dollar saved. Then add up every debt, every loan, every balance, every obligation. Subtract. Then take that number and compare it to the age-adjusted benchmarks for your generation, not the national average. That comparison will tell you one of a few things. Maybe you're ahead of where you thought. That's genuinely good news, and it means your current habits are working. Maybe you're right around where you'd expect. That's neutral information. It means you're moving with the average, which may or may not be fast enough depending on where you want to end up. Or maybe you're behind. And if you are, here's what I want you to hear clearly: that is information, not a verdict. It doesn't mean you've failed. It means the data is now working for you instead of against you. You know the gap. You can close a gap you can see. Most people never do this math. They feel their way through their financial lives, using spending habits and social signals as a proxy for progress. And because the signals around us are mostly misleading, they often feel better than the numbers actually are. The people who build real, lasting wealth aren't necessarily the highest earners. They're the people who looked at the actual numbers, understood the actual gap, and made decisions that were aligned with where they wanted to go, not with how they wanted to appear. You don't have to be wealthy to start thinking like someone who will be. You just have to be willing to look at the number honestly.